Um, so we have Phaedra Marshall from Critical Mass, raise your hand. And then we have Mark Cornick from TSNAP. And we have Alan Sharp-Paul from ScriptRock. And finally, Tom Duffield from Chef. And then he will be taking us into our introduction to open spaces. Whenever you're ready.
So hi everybody, my name is Phaedra Marshall, as you've already heard. I'm a tech lead for Critical Mass. I used to hold a similar position at Tribune Media Services, and so this talk is going to be about how I was first introduced to configuration management while I was working there. At almost every company I've worked at, from internships on up, there's been a group of system admins that are responsible for all of the infrastructure and networking for the company. At some of the smaller companies, each website or application usually has a dedicated team of system admins, usually consists of like a release engineer and maybe a DBA. At the larger companies that I've worked at, such as Tribune, there are a pool of system admins to choose from. So whenever you need to make any type of change at all, you have to submit a ticket and wait for somebody to respond. And you know, basically that was my experience at the Tribune. So as mentioned before, I'm a tech lead, and you may be wondering, what is a tech lead? What do they do? So tech leads, they wear many hats. I mentored other developers on the team. Sometimes I act as a business liaison. A lot of times I have to run interference for project managers. And ultimately, I need to understand the infrastructure of my site. So you may be wondering, why do tech leads need to understand infrastructure? Well, it's kind of like common sense. If you don't fully understand the infrastructure of your site, how can you manage it? And secondly, you know, as we already discussed, somebody needs to be responsible for their knowledge. System admins at larger companies cannot be expected to know all of the infrastructure details of your site. So that leaves the tech lead as kind of like the primary authoritative source. I mean, who else is going to write all these tickets? And this slide totally busted. It didn't look good. This next slide that's going to come up is basically going to give you a high-level overview of the site that I managed and its architecture, and hopefully it looks way better than this one does. So I'm not going to read it to you, but you can see it was a vastly kind of complicated site, had a lot of different layers. And since I work for the Tribune, I'll kind of let you look at that and maybe try to guess what the site was. I don't know if you'll be able to do it. I tried to scrub everything out. This is a high-level overview of the load balancer configurations as well as traffic stats. So you can kind of see the size and breadth of the application, how many unique visitors, how many clients we had, that type of thing. So one day, my director called me into the office, and he basically said, we need to do the following things. We need to separate from Tribune's infrastructure. The change has to be seamless to all of our end users, as well as seamless to all of our clients, and the release schedule cannot be affected. Oh yeah, by the way, we cannot hire a new system admin. So while he's talking to me, I'm having like this internal freak out moment. I'm like, okay, oh my God, I don't know anything about this stuff. How the heck am I gonna pull this off? So, you know, he's talking to me, I'm nodding, and then I go down after the meeting and talk to a system admin friend of mine who basically said, Phaedra, calm down. There's this thing called configuration management. So after I talked to him, I went to do my little Google research, and I'm like, you know what? I may actually like this because I don't have to submit tickets. I don't have to wait for you to respond. This may actually be a cool thing. So primarily what I learned about it that I liked is that I could codify my infrastructure. So I'm a tech lead, but I'm also a software engineer, which means I like to write code. And codifying the infrastructure will basically help me understand it better and learn more about it. The other thing that I liked was that once I write this code, it can be placed into a repository, which means that the team now has a historical record of all infrastructure changes. Like my current system was either keeping it in my head or in an Excel file. So I didn't have to worry about that anymore, which is pretty cool. When I started doing this, I did a little bit of research to figure out who was the leader in the space, what type of software should I choose, and the choice was basically between Puppet and Chef. And I realized they basically do the exact same thing. The only difference was programming language. Puppet has its own DSL and Chef is in Ruby. So ultimately, we decided to go with Chef, primarily because my director at the time was a Ruby guy and he insisted. And the other reason was because, you know, it's easy to get started. They have a lot of GitHub documentation and it was easy to integrate with AWS. So I'm using Chef, I'm writing cookbooks, I'm doing my thing. And I'm like, you know what, this is pretty cool. I really like this. And one of the things that I had not considered, which actually turned out to be a huge plus, is that now I can manage the users on my site or on my instances. Because before, we would come across these user accounts that were basically for people who left the company 3 or 4 years ago. So now I have total control over this, and I can manage it myself. And, configuration management is awesome. So basically, I have this cool power. I'm kind of like a new Jedi learning how to manipulate the Force, and it's like totally cool. But I still need my master Jedis because I'm not a sysadmin. So I need my DBA. I need my other sysadmins to give me advice on how to do what I'm doing so that I don't mess anything up. That's basically it. Thank you.
I'm Mark Cornick. I am the Ops Security Lead at a company called TeamSnap. I'm from Chicago originally. I'm in from the East Coast today. It's great to be back. I'm talking to you about customer support in DevOps. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, let's start here with, it isn't really DevOps anymore, right? It never really was just devs and ops. You've got design, UX, marketing, security, project management, QA, all these other people that are part of your organization that you're all working together well with, if you're doing the DevOps right, okay? But there's one ingredient that's missing here, and that ingredient is your customers. Where do your customers fit into this paradigm? Now, everybody basically has customers, whether or not you're selling a product or not, right? Customers basically are why you're doing what you're doing, right? No one is just, practicing dev and ops as an academic exercise in a vacuum. We're all working for somebody somewhere, and my slides are not advancing. This is the Ultra Ignite format. My name is Mark Cornick. That's C-O-R-N like November, I-C-K. That is also my Twitter handle if you put an @ in front of it. How about them Blackhawks? The Bears. My organization is hiring. We were hiring for somebody, I'm sure. Just not on my team. So I was born in Chicago, and my dad was trying to be a graduate student. There we go. I'll tell you more about my dad another time. All right, so yes, customers need to fit into the DevOps paradigm somewhere, right? Because they're really what you're doing all this DevOps for in the end is to make some kind of product, whether you're actually selling it or not. Customers are basically why you do what you do, right? Without customers, you don't really have any reason to be doing all this fun DevOps work that you do. So we're on manual advance now. That's awesome. We're not? Okay. Okay. So, so these people really should be represented in your decisions, and that's where support comes in. Your technical and customer support department really is the voice of your customers into your organization. And it is through support that you're going to hear what your customers think about your product, what works for them, what doesn't, et cetera. Now, a lot of you are saying, I don't do support. Maybe you have a separate support team that does that kind of thing. Maybe you started off as a tier 1 support person, worked your way up, don't want to be back. Maybe you don't know your product well enough, in which case you really should. Maybe you're just antisocial. Maybe you shouldn't be talking to customers. But guess what? You're already doing support whether you know it or not. And the reason you're already doing support whether you know it or not is that what you are doing has a direct impact on your customers, and therefore what you're doing supports the customer. Here's a typical example. So if you're making a software product, you have lots of goes into it. Code, infrastructure, design assets, UX work, all of that comes to your product, and you have happy cat customers with stars, with hearts in their eyes. But if you take out any one segment of that, say the infrastructure goes south, you don't have a product, you don't have customers, your customers have turned into crying cats. So really what you're doing is pretty important to the customer in the end, and thus you can really think of it as being part of support. And so support really should be part of this whole DevOps idea. It should be pretty much as important as the dev or the ops or design or anything else that we already are paying attention to. So basically, how do we get there? How do we form this dev support ops environment in our head? And there are a lot of ways you can do this, but the main way we do it at TeamSnap is pretty obvious when you think about it. And that is, drum roll please, you get everybody in the company to work on support. And I'm talking about from the C-suite on down. Everybody at TeamSnap works support. We all take a tier 1 support shift once a month. Gives us a chance to get out of our particular discipline, out of whatever weeds we're in, see the customer's perspective. And when I look at the customer's perspective, you see what they bring to you. The customers are using this product in ways that we never did. So they're seeing pain points that we don't. They're finding new and interesting ways to use it. Ways we never thought of, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We never thought of it that way. Basically, customers will let you know what's up with your product, what works for them, what doesn't, what can be improved, new ideas for new features, etc. It's a really valuable resource. And really, you need to find out what's up from your customers in some way or another. You can do it this way by working in support, or you can look at Twitter and Facebook when everybody gets angry and posts rage comics about you. I prefer the first method, honestly. Support, social media can be kind of scary sometimes. So at TeamSnap, as I said, everybody works support. We do 1/2 day on tier 1 per month. Additionally, most of the company works on a weekend rotation as well. My ops department, actually, since we have our own on-call schedule, we don't do that. But we are in there, for me, about 4 hours a month on tier 1, looking at bugs, looking at new features that are coming out, and all these other things that we get directly from our customers when they talk to us, things that I don't get anywhere else in my job in day-to-day. And honestly, the support department loves this. This is Jen Southland. She's my manager of support at TeamSnap. And you can tell, of course, that when someone works on the technical side, experiences a customer issue, they start to think about things in a different way. You know what that is? Looking at things from a different perspective. It's that word again. And I have a quote on here from one of the great Chicagoans of the last 100 years, Roger Ebert. I believe empathy is the most essential quality of civilization. Damn right. Rest in peace, Mr. Ebert. So that's all I have for right now. I will see you in support, hopefully, when I call your company's support department. And that's me, Mark at teamsnap.com, Mark Cornick. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alan Sharp-Paul. I'm one of the co-founders of ScriptRock. We make Guardrail. And this is, I guess, a comment on DevOps presentations and bloggers and, dare I say, thought leadership, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, so please bear with me. So we had a meeting recently with a rather large company, and it was a let us show you our product and you show us yours. And this was the comment at the end. They told us that your DevOps is very different to our DevOps. And it kind of struck me because I thought, how is this possible 5 years in that we can still get these types of comments? Now, I won't read this quote. I think this is possible because DevOps is still a little bit high level. It's still a little bit ambiguous. I think we're not really doing ourselves a favor in a lot of the blogging and the talks we're doing. I'm really getting down to the practical application. It is a little bit academic. A lot of the thought leadership these days is a little bit academic. Now, that's not a terrible thing in and of itself. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, the more academic it is, the more it moves away from practicality. And I think when it's high level and poorly defined, there's also too much of a focus on style over substance. Now, this is rather a long quote. I'm going to try and read out some of it because this is a double thing. So this was in relation to French intellectual thought, and he was saying style has become an object of first importance. It's got a prancing, high-stepping quality. It stops from time to time in studied attitudes as if awaiting an outburst of applause. It has had a deplorable influence on the quality of modern thought. Now, it's totally unfair to apply that to DevOps, but I think there are similarities. When something's high level, when it's a bit ambiguous, a bit hard to define, often you fall back on style and almost showboating. Just out of interest, if anyone wants to look it up, Alan Sokol actually tested this in the academic space by submitting a gibberish paper to a respected journal, but he wrote it in the correct style and it was accepted. Now, this is a pretend keynote for JSConf, what the work of this 18th century philosopher tells you about the Angular JS framework. Now, this isn't real, obviously. If you go to a JS conference, they're not going to let you get away with this type of talk. They're going to show me something practical. That doesn't really happen in the DevOps space quite so much. Again, look, it's wonderful, but it can be very high level, and as a result, the quality of the presentations, or at least the substance of the presentations and the talks and the blogs, can suffer. So this is actually true. I think it has been about 188 days since my last DevOps post. I haven't got my chip yet, but I really ran out of ideas. To write about. There's only so much you can write about DevOps, to be honest, and I literally kind of gave up. Now, these aren't real blog posts, but I think if you look at these titles, I think you can imagine them reading them maybe on DevOps.com. Sorry, Alan, but this is kind of the direction we're heading in. People are running out of ideas, so they're kind of reaching for something. What can I do to add a little bit of spice? I also think a bit of humour needs to be added into things. I tried once. I wrote a talk about needing to talk about DevOps, talked about jumping the shark. I was actually told that me and my little startup were partly responsible for creating the peak of hype, which I found quite interesting. We then did the DevOps in a Box video, which Bridget kindly referred to. We were called dishonest. We were called hypocrites. It was a joke. It was satire. Come on, guys. We need to lighten up just a little bit. The other thing that really annoys me, and if Mr. Ducey's here, we'll probably have a fight later, but I really get sick of this as well. Like saying ITIL's a joke, saying things that have come before are a joke. The amount of work that went into the ITIL framework, a lot of smart people, the fact that we have had a single vocabulary got created. Let's not write off the past. Like, let's be better than that. And I double slided this one too, so there we go. There are other areas where I think we need to be a little bit more open. It is a very open community, but when it comes to proprietary software, Microsoft shops, suits, so-called suits or vendors, again, we need to be a little bit more open, a little bit more welcoming. So what's my advice? Well, look, my number one piece of advice when you're writing or presenting, can I explain this without using the word DevOps? If it's automation, talk about that. If it's organizational theory, talk about that. You don't always have to use the word DevOps. Let's also focus on what is great about DevOps. This community is fantastic about DevOps. Let's not get hung up on prescriptive things or trying to learn DevOps or do DevOps. Let's just be thankful for this community that we have. And the final one, if in doubt, always ask yourself, what would Patrick do? Because really, and this is with all due complete respect, he's the most level-headed, the most honest, the guy with the least stake in this stuff, really. If you can say a talk or you could write a blog and read it out loud to Patrick, then you've probably done an okay thing. Thank you for that. Come talk to me. We're hiring, all that stuff. Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Tom Duffield. I am with Chef, but today I'm going to talk to you about being an introvert and attending technical conferences. This is something that's really meaningful to me because I am an introvert and I attend a lot of technical conferences. So first off, I want to get off the bat, I am not a medical professional. I have had no medical training. I am just a guy looking at a crowd, asking you to not hold any of this against me. So just keep that in mind. So first off, it's funny that you actually mentioned this. The origin of this talk was an organizer at Silicon Valley said, hey, one of our Ignites dropped out. You want to write an Ignite? I was like, sure. It was going to be about Chef? Probably not. Because I didn't want to talk about Chef anymore. I talked about Chef all week at Velocity. So this is that. Definitions. These are really, really bad definitions because I have like 10 seconds. Introversion essentially is you recharge by being alone and kind of in your own head. Extroversion is you recharge by being with people. Introversion means being around people is tiring, and that was bad. So I picked up this book, Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, and essentially it kind of led me to realize that being an introvert is like having a superpower because you can see and do things that others can't. And a lot of some really great people in history have been introverts. Newton, Einstein, Rosa Parks, they were all introverts. And yet they accomplished really fantastic things. So I'm going to start off this with what can extroverts do to help introverts. This actually came out of a Minneapolis session that we had. So keep this in mind as we're going into sessions this afternoon. So first is be aware of others trying to enter into the conversation. Introverts don't necessarily like to force our way into the conversation, but we probably have something to say and will look like we have something to say. So be aware of that. And maybe create an opening for us to talk, but don't call us out individually. Don't be like, hey Tom, you look like you have something to say, because I may have not had something to say. I may have just been staring off blankly into space. And that can actually cause anxiety for a lot of people if you draw attention to them when they didn't want attention drawn to them. Also, just in general, when you have conversations with people, avoid really ambiguous questions like, hey, how are you? What's up? And how is school, honey? Because usually you're going to get like one-word answers. But if you ask us like in-depth questions like, hey, what was Tom's talk? What was your favorite point? What do you think of Peter Capaldi's new doctor? We will talk for hours. So this next section is actually for you introverts. I basically kind of came up with these just with my own experiences. So the first is realize you are in good company. DevOps is about empathy. We will all be empathetic to you. So don't feel like you need to change who you are or act any differently to try to fit in or act like an extrovert, because that's just going to tire you out more and you're not going to have very much fun. Second, if it helps, find a role for yourself. Approach a conversation from a persona that can maybe help you direct some conversation. Like if you want to know things, like be the guy who's going to or the girl, I'm going to ask questions. That's going to be my thing. But don't feel bad if you don't talk. My first conference, I didn't say a word. I just listened, and that's fine. It's okay to be quiet. If you don't have anything to add or you don't want to add anything, don't feel obligated to. When you're at a larger conference, there's usually pre-conference activities like the day before, like training and some stuff. That's actually a really good thing to attend because it's a small group with a very focused topic, and you get a chance to actually meet people in a small group. And then you know those people, and you know that they have at least one thing in common with you. And so you can go like, hey, we did the training yesterday. Isn't that cool? Lunch. Get to lunch early, and if you want to, sit at a table by yourself. There are a limited number of chairs. People will have to sit next to you, and then so you don't have to worry about approaching them. Also, after conference activities, spend at least 15 minutes there. Give at least 15 minutes to any conference activity before you leave, because chances are it'll be a lot less scary after that 15 minutes. Okay, so this is a really important one. Take time to recharge. If you need to step away for like 10 minutes and play Angry Birds on your phone or something like that, that's cool. Just if you need the time to be by yourself, take it. And this is so important that I put it twice so I have more time to talk about it. It's okay if you don't want to go to every single thing or you aren't at every single thing for the entire period of time. Do what's comfortable for you. If you need to go somewhere, take a break and come back, that's okay. So my name's Tom Duffield. The book, Quiet the Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, is a fantastic book. I recommend both introverts and extroverts read it.
Thank you.